I think we all know that I'm a big fan of bullet journaling and creative journaling, but how do you get from a blank page to a functional but also pretty page in your journal? I'm going to show you how I do it today. Hi, my name's Erin. I make bullet journaling and stationery videos here on YouTube, and I'm a really big fan of having pretty layouts in my journal because I am more likely to use it if I like what I'm looking at. I realize that's not the case for everyone, and I did want to have a little disclaimer that your journal doesn't have to be pretty. As long as it's working for you, it's good, you're doing a great job. But if you do want to take it to the next level, I'm going to show you how to plan a beautiful theme from start to finish. But before we talk about these beautiful things, first I want to talk about these beautiful things from today's sponsor, Ana Luisa. Are you set for Mother's Day? It's coming up soon, it's on the 12th of May. If you're not set for Mother's Day yet, I have good news for you. The folks at Ana Luisa are having up to 25% off. I'm going to help you out today and show you some things from Ana Luisa that might be the perfect fit for the wonderful woman in your life. If you're not familiar with Ana Luisa, they are a jewelry company based out of New York. Their pieces are beautiful and quietly luxurious without breaking the bank, and they're also designed to last. Every piece of Ana Luisa jewelry is hypoallergenic, it's water resistant, it will not tarnish, and it comes with a 2-year warranty for extra peace of mind. They offer free shipping within the US, and for those of us outside of the US, they have some really affordable shipping options too. I have some beautiful new Ana Luisa pieces I wanted to show you for some inspiration. I already had a few pieces from Ana Luisa. I have the Lucy bracelet, which has these lovely little stars on it, and also the Sky ring set, which is a star and a moon that stack, or you can wear them separately if you prefer. So I wanted to expand on that theme with the celestial vibes, which led me to the Celeste earrings, incredibly appropriately named. These ones have a little moon on one side and a little star on the other. They're a huggy hoop. They are the easiest huggy hoop to put in that I have ever had, and I put these on as soon as I got them, and I haven't taken them off since. I've slept in them, I've showered in them. They're so comfortable. They're not tarnishing at all. I think they look fantastic. So I'm going to be wearing these ones a lot. I've got the bracelet, I've got the rings, I've got the earrings. I needed a gold necklace to round out the look, you know, to complete it. And I've gone for two actually. This one is the Hannah rose engraved necklace. It's so beautiful. To me, this feels like a piece of artwork that you would find in an antique store. It has this lovely dainty frame, and the face is actually mother of pearl. Could that not be more perfect for Mother's Day? So this is Hannah. This is Tracy. Because I already had little cubic zirconia accents in the rings and the bracelet and even in these earrings too, I thought it would be good to have a similar vibe for the necklace. I couldn't find one that was a star, but I thought this little heart would be a good fit too. You know how people say you wear your heart on your sleeve? What if you wore it around your neck? Is that maybe not cuter? I think so. If you'd like to treat your mum to something that is as special and resilient as she is, Ana Luisa are offering up to 25% off right now for a limited time, so jump on there and find that beautiful thing for the special woman in your life. Thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video, for making Mother's Day really easy this year, and for sending me these beautiful things too. I'm a cat mum. It totally counts. Jumping back into journal planning things, I know planning how you're going to set up the system that you use to plan maybe sounds a little redundant, but trust me, I find it really helps me a lot. And I do also want to preface this by saying that I don't always fully plan out a theme. I do have a little bit more pressure on me to do that because this is somewhat my job. Making videos about planners on YouTube is somewhat my job now, so I do want them to be kind of good, so planning them out helps make that happen. If you prefer the process of decorating your journal more intuitively, then that is fantastic, and honestly, that's how I prefer to do my reading journal setups most of the time, so you'll get no judgment from me. But the setup we're going to be looking at today is actually my May 2024 theme. This was last week's video, the Plan With Me video on my channel, so if you haven't seen that yet, you can go check that out. You can do that now, or you can wait till the end of this video if you prefer. This one I thought would be great because it's somewhat accessible. I wanted it to be easy and quick, but still come out really cute because I just didn't have a lot of time to spend on it. So how do we get it from blank pages to fully realized? Let's talk about it. The first thing I like to do is plan out what I actually want from my journal for the coming month. What pages do I need to be able to serve those needs? And what order do they make sense in the most? I don't actually know what I should call that. Let's go with designating the pages. And you also maybe need to determine whether you need a full spread, the left and right page together, or if you only need one page to serve the purpose, like with my Goals, Favorites, and Musings page here on the left, or my habit tracker on the right. We're going to travel back through time to before I set this up and do this part together. Here's my journal. This one is from Mellow Days, and I'm leaving a few pages blank so I can do some memory keeping before the May pages start for anything that I want to remember from April. And I'm jumping in with sticky notes, and I'm going to write on my sticky notes what I want to sit on each spread. You can also just write in pencil directly on the page if you prefer, but I like the sticky notes because it saves me from erasing pencil marks later, which I'm going to end up doing anyway. I'm a huge fan of cover pages. I just find they help me get in the headspace for the upcoming month and kind of think about what I want. Likewise with the quote page, it helps me set an intention. So that's what I'm designating for the first page. I've used arrows to determine which page I think those might go on, but I'm not totally sure. And then we can move on to the next one. This is the calendar spread, and this is an essential one for me. I like to have somewhere that I'm able to track appointments or events or anything that's coming up soon that's not quite here yet in my weekly, so I can keep an eye on things. They also go in a Google Calendar, but I like to write things down more than once. The calendar one goes across both pages, which makes it a spread. This one I'm going to have two different things on each page. So on the left side, I'll have my goals, favorites, and musings page, not spread, just one page. And I'm going to have the habit tracker over on the right side. So I'm drawing arrows so I know which side I want each of those to go on. Another great thing about using post-it notes rather than pencil is that I can change my mind on the order of these pages if I want to, and just peel off the sticky note and move it to the next one, and that's fine. The content planner has been one that I have been using and then not using and then using and not using. I haven't used it in a while. I want to bring it back, so we're going to add it to May. That's going to take up a whole spread, so that means the left and the right page will both be occupied by that. I did mention in the video last week, I thought I would just mention it again here in case you've been watching my videos for a long time. I promise I didn't forget my spending log. I'm just moving them to a different notebook, so you won't be seeing them in my Plan With Me videos anymore, but I'm still doing them, I promise you. Which means the next spread will be the first of my weeklies, and I'm trying something new here. I'm doing kind of a rolling, I really don't know how to describe this, but 3 days to a page, which means I'm only going to fit 6 days to a weekly, which is fine. I'm just going to wrap the Sunday around to the next spread. I'm actually going through and writing down the dates on each of my post-its so that I can make sure that everything's accounted for. Unfortunately, 6 doesn't divide into any of the numbers of days that we have in a month very well at all, so I'm going to end up with the 31st just kind of left over and floating on its own if I continue this all the way through the month. I don't want that to happen, so I'm actually probably going to end up just squeezing it onto my last weekly, but for purposes of the Plan With Me video, I only set up the first weekly and we will do the rest on live stream, so stick around for that. But this is how I designate my pages so I know where everything should go. Now that it's all sketched out, I can think about the aesthetic, and I knew for this setup I had these stamps that I got recently, and I thought that's going to be a quick and easy way to decorate things. I think it's going to work really well, but I like to test my theories before I commit to them, so at the back of my journal, I usually like to do a little mood board page, just test all of the stationery out together. This is April, clearly. It's a little test for April. We've got March, my teapots going on, and my January theme. These were all done with my channel members. That was the initial setup. We had a little test run of the stamps over the gouache paint to see if it would work. My initial plan for this was clearly quite different to where we ended up, so let's have a look at how that worked. I only got these stamps recently, but I knew straight away that they were going to make my life easier for May, and I thought, let's base the theme around these. So I quite often start with a single starting point like that and build the theme around it, although it's usually a washi or something. I have used stamps with calligraphy inks before and had some success, so I thought it might be really fun to do that again here. My initial plan was to use these 2 Ferris wheel press inks. This one is called Glistening Glass, and just paint it directly onto the stamps with a paintbrush, which has worked before, but doesn't work as well with these ones as we're about to find out. So the paper in this journal is watercolor paper, which means it really holds up to wet things very well, very nicely. But when you apply the ink to the stamp, rather than sticking to the raised parts of the stamp, which is obviously where you want your pigment to go, it kind of sinks into the crevices instead and goes where you don't want the ink to go. So when you tip it over and then place it on the page, the ink pools in some corners and just doesn't apply very evenly. I don't hate that look, but it isn't what I was going for this time. I actually think if your aim was to have a very vintage looking, very imperfect sort of a setup, this would be great with calligraphy inks and you could definitely give it a go. But I was looking for something more consistent so that every time I used the stamp I'd get a similar result. Also, when I'm doing this mood boarding process, I like to add little swatches of the colors I'm using and label them so that if I'm looking back at this in a week, say I don't set this up straight away, then I remember what I used, because sometimes I will forget. This one is the Workshop Wishes ink, which is going to behave in a very similar way, but I'd come this far, I wanted to see what they looked like together, because that was my original vision. And I also thought this time I'd maybe use my paintbrush to kind of wipe it off and try to pick up some of those extra bits of ink, but the results were pretty similar, so that didn't quite work out either. The only thing I didn't try was applying the ink to some kind of a dish, like pouring some of it out and then dipping the stamp in that. I didn't really want to waste the product, so just for a test run, I didn't want to give that a go this time. I also considered maybe trying watercolor, but I thought it would probably have a pretty similar result, so I've decided to change tack completely. However, something I do like is the way the stamps are looking next to each other, especially in the cases where I've got a circular stamp next to one of the shapes that are a bit more like a cross. So I'm learning still from this process, even though the materials I'm using aren't working together the way I wanted, I'm still getting something out of it. Writing these little notes really makes me feel like I'm going back to my visual art diary from high school, and it's really satisfying. I'm writing, it's working, but I think it could work better. Because the vibes here are like beautiful tiles, I actually then turned to Google. I googled Portuguese tiles to get a bit of a reference for some colours that I might try, which led me to my set of brush pens from Artistro. I love these things. I'm pulling out some of the matte colours for this one. My original plan was blue and yellow with brown, so let's have a little swatch of those and see how they look together. I'm not feeling it. I'm liking the blue and the yellow, but I don't know about the brown, so what else have we got? I don't want to have a checkerboard thing going on, so I do feel like I need a third colour. What about this turquoise? Before I can test it out on the stamps, I actually need to clean them first so I can get all of that calligraphy ink off and not kind of interfere with the colours of the pens. Starting out with the turquoise, you can see straight away how much better this applies to the surface of the stamp. None of it is disappearing into the recessed areas of the stamp, it's just sitting there right where I need it to make contact with the page. That's a very good sign. This process might seem a little bit tedious to some of you because you have to colour in the face of the stamp before you place it on the page every time. Yes, that is going to take a little bit longer than ink pads, but I don't own very many ink pads, and this way I can use colours that I do already have in my collection without having to buy anything else. I really like paint pens with stamps, actually. That's probably my favourite way to use stamps, and they will also work with other water-based markers, like you can use stamps with Tombow dual brush pens if you wanted to. I wanted these colours to be really bold and bright and even on the page when stamped, so that's why I'm going with these paint markers specifically, and the brush tip on them makes it really easy to colour in the stamp quickly. Because that is a big brush tip, it's very effective. I do need to make sure I'm placing my stamps right next to each other like these blue and yellow ones though, and not leaving a gap like the green one. Does anyone else's cat love getting all up in whatever craft project you're doing and causing havoc? Because mine certainly does. He'll come and sit exactly where I can't see my project anymore, and then if I try to move him out of the way, he just stumbles through it. So thanks for that, Mitsu. Thankfully, nothing was harmed, so never mind. My aim here is not to have two of the same colour or pattern next to each other, so I'm testing out a few of the different stamps to see which ones I think look good with which colours. And you can see how much more even the stamping process is with the paint markers than with the calligraphy inks, because wow, what a difference, right? I never really set out with this colour scheme in mind, but I do really like how it's looking, even though it's very summery. It's kind of out of season for everyone right now, but I like it, and I feel like people are thinking about summer holidays already, right? So maybe some people will get something out of it. So now I know how I want to decorate the pages. What about headings and lettering and stuff like that? These pens have such thick brush tips. My instinct was to think maybe I could use those because then I can perfectly match the colours in the theme to the colours of the lettering, but I think the brush tip is just too big, so I've dipped into my collection and I found this one. It's a Pentel brush sign pen in the colour turquoise, and it's a touch darker than the green that I've used for the tile stamping, but I think it's similar enough that it doesn't look distractingly different. I think it works with the themes, and it has a much smaller brush tip on it, which means I can get into much smaller spaces and make much more comfortable lettering choices. See how it's just a shade darker? It's just that little bit darker than the existing green. I think it's close enough. Close enough is good enough for me. My next thought was, what else do I have that I could use with these? Am I going to incorporate some stickers or some washi tapes? I had a look through my collection and nothing was really singing to me too much, except maybe for this yellow PET tape from the washi tape shop. I think that's a really good match to the yellow marker, but I thought it might have just been too much going on. I did have a couple of solid washi tapes I thought I would refer to as well, although I've used quite a lot of these ones. There's none of the greens left from this set at all. This yellow I thought could work really well. Tried out some of the other colours next to it, but I didn't think they were quite the right fit. The yellow I thought could work, but I have barely any of it left on the roll, so that kind of cancels it out as a contender as well, because I couldn't do a whole theme with what I have available. The whole point of this mood boarding test page is to try things out next to each other and see what you think, and I had torn a little bit of the top of this tape anyway, so since it was a damaged bit that I probably wouldn't end up using in my journal anyway, I thought we'll stick some down and just see how I feel about it. I think the colours do look good, but I just think there's too many different patterns and shades going on here and it's getting a bit overwhelming and messy, so as much as I think the colour is a good match, I don't know about the PET tape this time. I think maybe not. Let's clean off the stamps again. Since I'm trying to make sure that I'm not putting a color next to itself, and I'm trying to also make sure that I'm mixing up the patterns that are next to each other, I'm actually thinking I might stick with the same color for the same stamp every time, and then I don't have to clean the stamps in between each use either. I can just color over each one. It'll be easy to see which one I've designated as what because the color will still be visible on the stamp. But I still need to work out a way to make sure I'm getting the stamps right up next to each other every time so they really look like tiles. There's a little bit of a gap at the edges and I need to kind of account for that. So great, now we know what's going on each page and we know how we're going to decorate it. So the next step is to plan out how these two elements are going to work together. Also, just before we get into all of this planning stuff, I wanted to mention this process is actually something that I do on live stream with my channel members each month. We didn't do this one together because this month's live stream we actually planned out the initial setup for the upcoming giveaway journal together instead, which was really exciting and fun. I spilled bubble tea all over my desk right before it happened. It was a whole time. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can become a channel member on the Jubilant Journals or the Page Majors level, and you can join in on this live stream with us every month or catch up on the replay if it's at a time that's not convenient for you. I just wanted to let you know that was an option. There's a link in the description to join, or there's a little button that says join next to my name down underneath the video too. Unless YouTube's moved stuff around. I think they're changing layouts. For some people, I don't know, it's not great. So now I'm going to jump in with a pencil and I'm going to sketch out exactly where everything's going to go on the page so that I know when I jump in with my pens that it's all going to be in the right spots. Sometimes this requires a bit of trial and error and erasing, but it's always better to make your mistakes in pencil than it is to make them in pen. So let's have a look. Let's flip back from the mood board page back to where we're going to begin setting up for the month of May. I have a few tried and true page layouts that I like to go back to, and I do usually like to, in this situation, have my quote on the left and the cover on the right. I don't know why I like it better that way, but that's just how it feels comfortable to me. Because the colours in this layout are quite bright and quite different to what I usually use, I thought colour would be a fun way to theme the quote, so I found this one from Wassily Kandinsky. Colour is a power which directly influences the soul, and I'm writing it out first on a post-it note because I'm going to use that to do some maths to work out exactly where it's going to go on the page later. I also thought it might be an idea to measure my stamp, so it's coming in at about 2.7 centimeters for the actual length of the stamp itself, but the design on it fits really nicely into 2.5 centimeters. And this is a 5mm dot grid page notebook, so that means it's going to be exactly 5 spaces from the left to right and the top to bottom of each of the stamp designs, which is fantastic. That's really convenient for me. It means I'm going to very easily be able to sketch out exactly where I want my stamps just by drawing squares that are similar to a calendar square almost. I'm having a look on Google Images to see if I can come up with a lettering style that I like for May, and I liked this one, but it was made of flowers, so I thought I'll see if I can find something similar within Canva. I'm just auditioning a whole bunch of serif fonts here, and the one I'm going to come down to is actually one that I found at the beginning. It's called Vida Loca, and it has these nice boxy edges but also some circles. I'm using my grid spacing guide to very quickly and easily work out where the center of the page is, and when I'm doing a heading like this, I like to sit just above the center of the page, so I'm actually going to use that center marker as the bottom area of where I'm going to letter the word May. In retrospect, I think I would have liked this just a touch lower, 1 or 2 boxes lower, but it is where it is, and I have done the layout now, so it's gonna stay where it is, and that's totally okay. I still think it looks good. I just think maybe it could have looked a touch better, but that's all right. The dot grid layout actually makes it a lot easier to copy something like this. You can kind of gauge so that the height of each letter will be the same if it's the same case, upper or lower case, and you can make the width of all of the downstrokes the same because they'll be equal to, say, half a dot grid space or something like that, so that I find really handy. I'm going to start my decoration from the top right corner here, so I'm just going to be drawing out boxes that are 5 spaces tall and 5 spaces wide, and this is where I'm going to position my stamps. I think having the lines on the page is going to really help me keep them next to each other, so they're kind of kissing the stamp design that's right next to it. I don't want any gaps in between them where I can help it, although I'm sure it will happen anyway. We'll see. If the way I'm drawing out the line looks a bit strange and jerky, it's because I'm also counting boxes at the same time as drawing at least the initial one for each box, so that's why it looks a little less smooth maybe than you would expect. And I'm also going to deliberately leave some gaps where I don't want a stamp, but the dimensions will be the same, almost like a tile has fallen off the wall, if that makes sense. I wasn't sure I would remember that I wanted those ones empty though, because in some cases they still had lines on all of the sides because there'd be one next to it, so I'm just adding a little NA in those ones so I know that in my mind I didn't want a stamp in that spot. I'm pretty lucky that I have a fairly vivid internal eye. I can imagine things very easily. I can kind of conjure up the image in my head and then try to copy that. onto the page, if that makes sense. If you're not someone who has that ability, sketching this stuff out beforehand helps even more. I'm actually not going to work out beforehand which color will go where, but if you wanted to add that kind of information onto your sketch, you could do that too. Now I'm moving on to the quote. I've again worked out where the center of the page is, and I'm counting how many letters are in what I'd like to be in the first line of the quote, working out what the center letter is, and then basing where I place the quote on the page around that. Typically, I'll do one dot grid space for each letter, and I'll count a space in the sentence, like this one has color is, so I'm counting the space in between color and is as a letter, if that makes sense, so that things will end up balanced across the page. This is another case of making the mistake in pencil first being much better than making it in pen and then being sad about it. So for instance here, I was trying to fit directly and influences onto a single line, and it did fit, but I felt like it was a bit too wide for the rest of the decoration on the page. I wanted it to kind of have a similar width to the May lettering on the opposite page so that it would feel comfortable to the eye and kind of like a mirror image sort of thing. So I've split directly and influences onto separate lines instead, which has made the quote taller, but it matches in width now, and I liked that better. I'm planning to use a mixture of hand lettering and letter stamps for all of the words throughout this setup, except for that May cover. So I'm thinking the quote will be in the letter stamps, and the attribution for the quote I'll do in hand lettering so that both of those are introduced, so when they come up later in the setup they aren't kind of a surprise, you know? I'm jumping onto the calendar spread now, and I've decided to make the boxes for my calendar spread the same size as the stamp, so that means 5 spaces tall by 5 spaces wide. I kind of just jumped in. I knew the shape of the calendar because I refer to Google calendars generally to find out where the days need to fall. And typically for most months, you're going to end up with 5 rows for like one for each week. So I think I've just gotten used to this. I don't plan it out besides like I start counting from the binding and move outwards from there. So I always like to have 4 days on one page and 3 days on the other. I don't like the middle of my calendar to cross the binding in the space where you need to be writing your information. So I always try to make sure that as much as it's not symmetrical, I think this is the most comfortable way for me. The journal I'm using right now actually has the dots go really, really close to the binding in the middle of the page, which I typically try to avoid actually using that inside row of dots, but I'm using it here to make sure I have lots of space for stamping around the outsides. I'm looking forward to my next journal because this is actually a detail about this one that really annoys me. The last day of May is on a Friday, so I'm trying to make sure that I don't accidentally draw out the Saturday, Sunday boxes at the bottom that are not necessary. I like to just add the number for each day in the first row in the Mondays so that I know I've ended up with the right numbers where they're supposed to go. That helps me a little bit. And I like to add the row across the top where I'm going to put the initial for each day of the week too, mostly for other people's benefit more than mine because I do share my layout so much online. It just helps to be clear that it's starting on Monday and that's a calendar and, you know, it's kind of a visual indicator. I don't know if I need them necessarily, but I do it. This part could look very confusing on camera, but I'm drawing out the boxes where the stamps are going to go, and because I want it to be obvious that the stamps are not part of the calendar, I'm putting a little ST in the spots where I'm going to put the stamp, and again a little NA in the spaces where I don't want a stamp. That's really going to help me keep it straight when I'm actually setting this up with the paint markers. I'm quite often listening to audiobooks while I'm setting up my journal, so sometimes I get a little bit too carried away and I forget what I'm doing and I just go on autopilot and make terrible mistakes, so just adding a little ST is going to help me. The next 2 pages are for goals, favorites and musings on the left and habit tracker on the right. Because these both don't need too much space for the actual planning elements, I thought it might be cool to tie them together, give them both the same decoration, which is just a slab, 2 rows of stamps down the sides, no gaps this time, just solid stamps all the way. I'm going to be dividing the left page into 3 to make it the space for the goals, favorites and musings, and then kind of into 4 or 5 for the habit side. So I find this is a good way to tie together 2 pages that might look really disjointed otherwise, is to just decorate them in the same way, and that makes your eye think, oh, these are things that belong together, and it gives it kind of an overall cohesion. I have previously worked out the 3rd divisions for this book on my little grid spacing ruler, so I'm using those. I love it so much, it saves me from counting out spaces. I will link to the initial setup video for the journal in case you'd like to find out how to make one for yourself. I stole the idea from Tracy Tyler Revell. It is truly the stuff of genius, and for this one I'm just using it as a literal ruler so I could work out that it was 17 spaces from the inside dots to the edge of my decoration, and I didn't have to count them because they were on the ruler. And I know that I need 7 spaces wide for a habit tracker calendar, so then I knew that I needed to leave 5 spaces blank on either side of it, and then it would be centered in the space that remained. Love the grid spacing ruler, it is the most useful thing. Because these are little calendars, the habit tracker, individual tracker things are little calendars, I knew I needed 5 spaces for the actual weeks, the numbers to put down, and then a space to put the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and a space to put the actual name of the habit. So then I could also work out with my ruler how much space I had remaining, how much I could kind of divide to allow space in between each one, which left me with 4 habit tracker calendars that are really cute, actually. I didn't include a content planner in April, but I did include one in March and I really liked it, so I'm referring back to that as a reference and just counting out my spacing that I used previously and copying it over here. Because they sit right next to the binding, I'm starting from there, so I'm counting out 7 spaces from the binding and 15 times 2, so 30 spaces tall on the left side. I actually copied that over to the right page too, but then I realized that I needed to change those measurements. We'll come back to that. This is essentially the first half of the month on the left page and the second half of the month on the right page across Instagram and YouTube, right? So this is what's going to go into those spaces. The first of the wider columns is for YouTube, the second of the wider columns is for Instagram, and then the tiny column that's on the left side is where I'm going to write the number and the initial for each day of the month so I know where I'm up to. The month of May has 31 days, so I can't have them both exactly match, unfortunately. I've just added 1 extra grid space at the top and bottom of the right side to accommodate the 31st, and I think this would look so lovely for a month that has 30 days. It still works fine this way for a month with 31, but might be just ever so slightly prettier when it's height matched on both sides, you know? In order to keep the page a little bit less busy, I'm using symbols at the top for Instagram and YouTube rather than writing the words, but you could write the words too, that would totally work. And I'm just lining up my boxes starting from the top left corner of the left page and then planning everything out based around that. So even though there are gaps, the Tetris blocks of stamps are kind of not touching each other. There are going to be 3, I think, on the left side at the top and 4 at the bottom. I'm still leaving gaps in between them, so it seems as though there could be stamps there, but they've fallen off or they just were artistically not included there. It also really helps that this Mellow Days journal has 40 dot grid spaces from top to bottom, like vertically on the page, which divides really well by 5, which is the stamp size. It would be a little trickier if that weren't the case, so I've just lucked out here, but most journals have 38 dots top to bottom for an A5 dot grid journal, so this might transfer a little differently to your own journal. Anyway, we've moved on to a weekly now. I've divided the page into thirds horizontally, so I'm going to end up with 3 columns. I'm going to do the same thing on the facing page, so that's going to give me the 6 days of the week that I'm going to be doing my daily to-do list kind of planning and events and stuff like that. My weeklies are where I spend most of my time, which is why I'm trying to give myself a bit more space for them lately. And I'm planning out where the stamps are going to go in such a way that the spaces to plan are kind of bouncy. So the Monday starts a little higher with more decoration at the bottom, the Tuesday has more decoration at the top, and then the planning happens a little bit lower on the page. And that just alternates across the page so that it's just something a bit more interesting than a solid row of boxes all the way across the top and bottom, which actually wouldn't leave me with that much space for planning. So I'm not going to do the other weeklies, I'm going to leave those for a live stream, but here's a little look through just the pencil. It's like a pre-set up flip through. From this point, it's really easy for me to imagine how it's going to look when it's done. Just imagine stamps in these spaces and color on the letters. There's not a lot of guesswork left over besides things like which colored pens am I going to use with the stamps in order to make that quote come to life. I didn't want to add too much more to this page because I feel like it's going to be quite a lot with all those squares. I think these 2 pages are the ones I'm most excited about. I think those bars of tiles are going to look really good with the functional planning stuff in the middle of the spread. I think with pages like this, I might end up adding more tiles than I'm expecting, but that's always something that I can do after. Sometimes you just have to see it first before you know this stuff for sure, and then the first of the weeklies. The pencil framework is all laid out and I'm feeling really confident, so now it's time to do the fun part. Honestly, it's actually all pretty fun for me, but this is the part where you really see your vision come to life, and that can be so satisfying. Let's tie the whole plan together and make this. Obviously, this is its own entire separate video on my channel already, so I'm not going to take you too far into the proper setup process. If you'd like to see this happen, you can hit the link in the description or in the top right-hand corner and go and watch the video. Obviously, I've done this several times in the past, so I know that these systems work really well for me when planning out a layout in advance, but having those squares on the page especially was a game changer because I really think I got much better spacing on my tiles. Granted, not all of them were perfect still, but I think it helped me a lot. Something I love about these paint markers, not the one I'm using here, but the ones I used for the stamps, is that they dry down really quickly, so you don't have to wait too long before you can erase your pencil markings behind them. Something I would probably change if I was going to do this again is I would try to make my lettering a little bit smaller for the quote attribution. I kind of started to run out of space there. I really like the way the calendar ended up looking, and I did add some more stamps on to what I anticipated. I didn't just stick to the boxes where I'd drawn things out in advance. I added a few more stamps to make sure that there was an even balance of blue and green and yellow across both sides of the page, especially since that was a detail that I didn't plan out and make a marking for in advance. I'm completely obsessed with these two columns of stamping tiles. I think these look so good. I ended up doing these ones in sequence so that I would make sure I never had the same stamp or the same color next to itself, and I love it so much. By this point with the content planner, I really knew what I was doing, so it was pretty quick and easy to just jump in and get this decoration down on the page around these functional elements that I've used before in the past. And when I tell you I am so ready to start using this weekly, oh, come on May, let's go. Let's get into it. And I'm also really looking forward to setting up the next couple of weeklies on live stream with you, so make sure that you're subscribed if you aren't already so that we can hang out together and do some weeklies in each other's company. Here is a flip through of the whole thing when it's all complete. And don't forget, if you really enjoyed this process, this is something we can do together as well, because I live stream this process with my channel members every month. As long as you're a Page Majors or a Jubilant Journals level channel member, then you'll have access to that live stream. And there it is! From conception to execution, that is my May theme. How it came to be from start to finish. I realize we're using stamps and pens here a lot, and there's not actually any sticking stuff into the journal element, which is what I usually do quite a lot of. It's really the same ideas. You can kind of mess around with how you want things to lay down on the page, and when you're happy with where they are, just take a photo so you remember. Then you can take it all off and start peeling things and sticking them around and that kind of thing too. That was really fun. I hope you enjoyed seeing behind the scenes of how the journal sausage gets made. I had a really good time sharing the process with you, so I hope that you got something out of it, learned something new, or maybe something that you might try in your own next journal setup. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really curious. Do you intuitively decorate your bullet journal, or are you a planner of your planner like me? Let me know. I want to have a chat about how these things come to be, because it's fun. Also, don't forget to check out Ana Luisa, who currently are offering up to 25% off, so you can treat your mum to something beautiful for Mother's Day and say thank you for everything that she does for you. Just in case you haven't checked out the May theme plan with me yet, I'm going to pop a link to that over here so you can watch it right now if you'd like to, and underneath that is a playlist of my previous Bullet Journal 101 how-to kind of videos, so if you want to check that out and learn some more stuff, that's right here. I'll catch you again in next week's video. Bye.